Hey everybody, welcome to PDQ Live. Today we've got a great show for you. Today I'm joined by Krista and Brock. No Tara this week, but that's all right. Today we've got a exciting kind of rundown. We're going to start with some Patch Tuesday, followed by a quick tech tip. Then we're going to dive into State of Sysadmin, right? So there's some great nuggets there. And then much to my chagrin, there is a game that involves me at the end.
Yeah, so, Tara's not here, but somehow you still got
somehow I'm still the butt of the joke at the end of it. But, you know, we'll see if we can eat up the entire time with those other three exciting topics.
I'll talk really slowly. I'm here to help you out.
Yeah, I like that. All right, should we dive right in?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with Patch Tuesday and Package Wednesday. Brock, what do we got?
Patch Tuesday's here. I mean, it's been an interesting week, right? We had the Super Bowl, and that was either a real high or a real low, depending on whether you were an Eagles fan or a Taylor Swift fan.
Well, Mark, who sits behind me, Mark Hurtado, is a big Dallas Cowboys fan. So it was just great to watch week. Yeah.
Oh man!
But
at least there was a half show for those of us who don't care.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that good.
Oh, we'll talk later.
Okay. It was a good concert, but it wasn't a great show.
It was.
We'll talk later.
Okay, sorry.
But then we had a good Patch Tuesday this week. Especially compared to like January and December, which were terrible. This week was pretty good. Total exploits patch 60, critical patches 3, and already known or exploited we had 5. So that is way better. I think the last 2 months were like up there in like the 150 range. Jeez. So yeah, a lot better this month. I don't know if Microsoft is just taking the month off or something, but we did have a few highlights. First one was CVE 2025-21379. Now this was a man-in-the-middle, or what Microsoft called a machine-in-the-middle attack, a DHCP exploit. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I'd never heard. Let me know in the chat if you guys have ever heard of machine-in-the-middle, or is this the first time that anyone's ever seen this? Anyway, this one, obviously, they would need to be on the same logical network as you. So that one, at least it's not like a remote attack.
But what do? You get in the middle of like a DHCP handshake and do what?
So they didn't go into the details. They said that they could read or potentially modify that network traffic.
Oh.
Yeah. So
nifty.
Interesting, for sure. Next up, we had CVE 2025-21381. Now this one bums me out because out of all the Microsoft utilities, it impacts Excel, and I love Excel. And this one is kind of your classic phishing attack, right? They craft a malicious Excel file, get you to download it, and then the crappy thing about this one is even if you just open it in the preview pane in File Explorer, it'll initiate the attack.
Oh, because it runs the macro to give you that.
Yeah, exactly. So,
love you, Excel.
Yeah, and that should probably, there's so many preview pane exploits that you should probably just disable the preview pane.
It was like such a good idea.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, like all good things, someone has to ruin it.
Exactly. And then lastly, we had 2025-21376. Now, this is another LDAP vulnerability. And this is like month 6 in a row or something like that for LDAP. It's become the new Print Nightmare. I don't know if there's a cool name like Print Nightmare was, but LDAP is just like every single month getting hit with something. So, and this impacts pretty much every OS out there that Microsoft currently supports. So yeah, definitely get this one patched up. But we also had a couple surprises. I think the new Outlook was supposed to launch this month, like basically forced upon you this month. And strong certificate mapping, that was also enforced as of Tuesday. So if you were inundated with tickets, like, you're using certificates for Wi-Fi or VPN or anything like that, you definitely could have been hit there if you hadn't already, renewed your stuff. So
yeah, it's basically, what was it, like certs issued in the last like 2 years?
Yeah, it was like 2022 or something.
Yeah, something like close, like you were totally fine. Like you didn't have to do anything.
So, but I'd be interested to know whether or not like many people saw, like maybe this caught them, off guard and like just got hit with tons of support tickets because of it.
Yeah. Cool. Chat's talking about Microsoft Works. I don't even remember Works. Do you guys remember Works?
Yeah.
What is Works?
Oh, yeah.
I recognize that name, but gosh, I can't.
I remember it from like middle school. It was like a weird alternative to Word.
Was it?
I thought it was like a little bit of design, a little bit of like, it was almost like a PowerPoint hybrid.
Well,
I don't know.
Maybe we should put it in the package library. Speaking of, let's go to Package Wednesday.
What a transition.
That's what we call in the biz a smooth segue. Well done. All right, Package Wednesday. Let's take a look at some of the new stuff that is floating around right now. We have AnyDesk, not just every desk, but AnyDesk, Microsoft ASP.NET Core 9 Runtime, and .NET Desktop Runtime 9. That's really pretty much it for Package Wednesday. Great work from the packaging team, by the way. Those guys are on it. I love that.
Yeah, like it's like three new packages, right? On top of I lost count of how many are in there, but it's just like more and more and more all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at Connect, I know it's over 200 at this point. I don't know how many more, but I mean, every single month, it's like a few new packages are just hitting that, and that's so you're supporting all of these, hundreds of packages plus adding new ones that you're adding continual support for, so it's not like it's just here, let me add this package, then I never have to touch it again. It's here, let me add this package, continually make sure it's up to date and stuff for all the awesome PDQs out there.
Yep.
So
100%.
yeah, it's a lot of work, and they crush it.
Cool. Thanks, PDQ packaging team. Alrighty, up next, I think we're on due for a quick tech tip. All right. Today, for our quick tech tip, we are going to be talking about everybody's favorite Microsoft installer type, the AppX package.
That hurts. That hurt to hear.
It's great. I love it. All right. I guess, so Tara let me know before she left that, hey, there's been some buzz about AppX packages, people wondering, how do I manage these things, this, that, and the other. There's one caveat I want to talk about when we're talking about AppX packages and their management. Adding AppX packages is really easy under the current user context, right? For you, because it's just like add AppX package. You give it the path on the screen, like we've got the Microsoft docs for it. It's really easy to use. The trick comes in when you want it for all users on a system. That makes stuff actually a little bit harder. And there's a kind of a mapping to it that's called AppX provisioned package, right? Which is kind of built into DISM. And the caveat here is if you add an AppX package using the provisioned package, it won't install for the user if they're already existing on the machine, right? So this is for net new users because it's provisioned. So when the user gets there, they get provisioned for the user and then show up.
So you want to show this one, AppX provision package, is that right?
Yeah, that's the one. This is like, I've got a new system. There's not users on it. If I get all of the provision package in here before a user gets here,
then when they
they log in,
right,
then all of a sudden they get it. If the user already exists, then you use add AppX package. So you could do, in the terms of Connect, this is where I wanted to show things, but I'm sorry, the machine broke. You would use add AppX provision package to run as local system because it's making it there for the machine for people to come in new. If there's already someone on the machine and you're trying to get an AppX package, you use Connect and run as the logged on user and get it there in their context. But that's the short and sweet. If you really want to dive into AppX packages, go watch an old deep cut from PDQ Live. So
just looking at Jordan.
Jordan did this one in 2020, right? And the link is in the description. If you really want to dive into AppX packaging, this is the webcast to go watch. It's a full 30 minutes run through, hey, here's how to whitelist, here's to remove, back and forth, all of that. Or we just avoid all of this AppX stuff altogether and use Winget. Winget is a great way to manage those applications, especially if it's like your machine. It works a lot like apt-get for anyone who's lived in that package manager world. But for all of my hardcore Windows admins, it's case sensitive. Like that's not usually a thing in Windows, but Winget's case sensitive. So before you go pulling your hair out, just remember that's a little gotcha there. Anywho.
And even, that's 5 years old, but still all accurate. Like, it hasn't really changed much since then.
Yeah, nothing has really changed at all with AppX packages. It's all the same. The commandlets are the same. There's some updates, but the general process is exactly the same.
Yeah.
For all of those.
And I know one of the bigger pain points, as far as AppX is concerned, is uninstalling them, getting rid of them, and that's kind of that's where you have, okay, well, I've got it on multiple user accounts, but these users aren't logged in. So how do I remove it off for all users and stuff?
Yes.
And then tracking that stuff and making sure that it's gone and I know we have like blogs on this and stuff too, but you can load those user hives and stuff, but it's tricky. It's not easy because you've got to go through a lot of work to load up these logged off user hives, check, see if they have it installed, remove it. And
that's what I'm saying. Like that's not a quick tech tip. That's like a full on deep dive. So go watch Jordan do it. Cause I remember him prepping for that.
Yeah. And you can always try the PDQ uninstall it all package in Connect. That one, people have had pretty good success about removing AppX package and provision apps like that. So
a thing to kind of keep in mind with winget as well. When you're using winget, the file type source that you get from winget can come from winget itself. You can specify the source to be the MS store, and also the installer that you get back. Sometimes it's an executable, sometimes it's an MSIX, sometimes it's an AppX. So you don't necessarily know what you're getting when you go to install it. But if it's just for you and your user on your machine, do you really care? Probably
and
not.
MSIX, that's the newest one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I think that's it for our quick tech tips. Should we talk about something more interesting? Maybe
I'm so
like
excited. I can't even tell you.
salary and the
Maybe
state
like
of sysadmin?
Money.
Let's talk about money.
What an intro.
That was really good.
Thanks,
dope.
Drew.
All right, so
Jake.
2025, state of sysadmin. We're going to dive in.
Yeah, so this is a report we do every year, and we surveyed over 1,000 sysadmins working around the world. We asked them about what are you seeing at your workplace, what trends are you seeing, and we really wanted to talk about salaries today.
Oh,
because
how to get paid.
It's the day before Valentine's Day. We really like you guys. We really want people to get paid. So we're here to dig into what we found in this survey. But first, let's break down who answered our survey. This is the average respondent. Most of you had the job title of sysadmin or senior sysadmin. Most of you have 10 or more years of experience, which honestly I think makes the report even more credible because we're really talking to people who know the industry. Most of you make between $75,000 and $100,000 a year. And in terms of where you work, most of you work in education, whether that's K through 12 or universities. A lot of you work in industrials and a lot in public service, which includes things like government jobs. Most of you are working at companies between 100 and 500 employees. So that's the average person who responded, but really the beauty of a report like this is we're going to get into the granular specifics. So let's talk about money. We're going to break down salaries in IT in a few different ways. The first way we're going to look at this is simply tenure. How long have you been working in your job? So how do salaries break down by your experience level? I mean, obviously, the longer you're in your role, probably, hopefully, the more money you're going to make. But I want you to be able to use this data to advocate for yourself and say, hey, if I've got 3 to 5 years of experience, what are my peers making in these roles? So you can see on this chart, the average sysadmin who's been working in the field for 3 to 5 years is making between 50 to 75K.
Okay.
So I'm really curious with the chat, like, does this line up with what y'all are seeing amongst your colleagues and in your own careers? Curious if this matches your
And
experience.
this is just sliced by tenure, right? So,
Yeah.
So not how long you've been working in IT whole, or is it how long you've been in the current title?
How long have you been working in IT?
Oh, so it's
whole?
IT
Yeah,
whole.
yeah,
So it's
just
not like
IT
I've been
in
a
general.
sysadmin for 10 years.
Yeah.
This includes like if I did like a stint in help desk for 3
Yes,
and
yes.
okay.
This includes, and we're going to break this down in a minute, but this includes roles from help desk to network engineers to C-suite levels, like CTOs.
Okay.
So yeah, we really want people to use this to be able to advocate for their own careers. And that made me curious for you, Brock and Josh, like, how have you seen conversations around salary play out in your careers, whether people are approaching you or you're the one initiating that conversation? Do you have any advice for our audience?
Ooh.
I mean, resources like this are
Yeah.
a huge help because
Yeah.
even like finding this type of information can be super tricky, right? You know, and here's the great thing about State of Sysadmin is we are polling like all the peers out there, right? We want this peer information. We don't just want to go and like write some like, you know, online resource that we're just
Yeah.
kind of guessing and putting information out
Yeah.
there. No, we're not guessing. This is directly from you guys. So you guys can see, hey, this has been my career path, but looking at like the average, other people are having this career path. So even just having a resource like this is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Is like you can Google like, hey, what is a insert job title salary? And you'll see like a, $70,000 delta there, right? So it's nice to hear from people that are actually doing the job, not just like some statistical garbage.
And because we love you so much, we're going to break this down in a few more ways because experience is only one factor to look at this. So on our next slide, we want to break this down now by role. Last time we did this survey, I think we had 4 options here. It was like contractor, help desk, sysadmin, manager, and executive. And feedback we got was, no, like this is way more involved, way more complex than that.
There's way more roles that are in between here.
So shout out to Brock for catching that when we were designing the survey. So now what we want you to be able to do is look at your role and see, okay, what's the average salary if I am a junior sysadmin, or if I'm a manager, or if I'm in help desk? So there's some interesting things that stand out to me here. This year, contractors and freelancers are making a lot more than they were last year. Have you guys ever worked with people who are straight up freelancers, or is that more something you see on the side from people's like main day job?
The only way that I'd call someone like a straight up contractor or freelancer is maybe like self-identifying as working at an MSP, like an MSP engineer. So I put myself in that bucket. So I might actually be a combination of 2 of these roles. I might be like a sysadmin, but a sysadmin contractor because they do work for another company.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or the other thing that I could think from here is like I have a side gig.
Yeah.
Right. I work my day job and it's great, but I help the 4 small businesses that I know because they can't afford for full time, but they do need help. So it's some extra cash.
And one thing I just know from my own job is if you're working truly freelance, you got to charge a lot because you don't have an employer that's paying taxes on your behalf. You don't have some of those benefits. So that could account for some of those, that really high percentage of contractors making over $150K. And again, we broke down what is the most common salary range here based on job title because we want you to be able to go advocate for yourself. So obviously, the higher you go up this hierarchy, the more money you're going to make. And that made me curious if you were talking to somebody that's a help desk tech and they're anxious to work their way up the ladder, how long do you think you've typically seen people stay in that role of help desk before they moved up to junior sysadmin?
Oh, wow. I think we're going to open up like a very divisive topic here.
Yeah.
Here's my take. I've seen very, very few companies that promote from within and so it's a promote from within and have the comp be in line, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of companies that will promote from within. Like I can go from like help desk to junior sysadmin or sysadmin and it's like, yep, I'm good. But the comp doesn't align with that as well. So you get the title.
Yeah.
So it's been my experience that to get not only the title, but the comp, jump to come with it, it's like a 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And that kind of happened to me. It was I was in one position and they're like, hey, we need you to start taking over like servers and things like that. And I was like, okay, well, there would obviously be a job title change there. And they're like, and our goal is to eventually
here's an extra $2,500 a year.
I can tell you that eventually never happened.
Yeah.
So, ouch.
Yeah.
I think it changes a little bit more though, right? Like, so that's like that lower end, that help desk to junior sysadmin to sysadmin. Like those are kind of like moving back and forth. And it's pretty often, and you can get some larger salary jumps in that way. Once
you're saying moving to a different job entirely, a different employer.
Different employer.
Yeah.
But I think as you get closer to the other end of the spectrum, when you're like a more senior sysadmin, senior network admin, something like that, those hops aren't necessarily as frequent. Like you can still have them, but it starts to be less effective.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that's something we see almost generationally. Like I look at my parents, almost the same workplace their entire career. Whereas millennials, Gen Z, I think there is a lot of like stay somewhere 2 years and bounce because that's the way that you up your salary. And I'm curious if it sounds like you're also seeing that in IT.
Yeah, I would say like I've seen that in IT. Like obviously that's not like true everywhere. Yeah. Like there are companies that really do take care of their employees and do want to promote from within because they value that.
What a dream.
I mean, we live in it.
And I wonder if there's a a best career path. Like if you're like, hey, I'm dead set, I want to be a sysadmin, eventually a senior sysadmin or whatever. I wonder if there's a best place to start, and I wonder if that's an MSP. Like if you can get in like a low,
We were
like,
talking about that a little bit.
That's been my career path.
yeah,
And I will tell you the amount of experience that I gained in an MSP versus an in-house job is very, very different.
right.
Granted, the stress and the amount of hours worked,
Very, very different.
they come with that trade
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Right.
That
And
makes
I think
sense.
the other thing that is sort of represented here, but I do want to call it out to it, is there is like a distinct moment in your career when you're almost making a decision. Do I go on a leadership track
Yes.
or do I become a senior individual contributor? Right.
Yeah.
And what does that look like and how does that change things?
Gosh, that's so real.
It can change things a lot. I mean, even in my former career in radio, the reason I went into programming is that's where the money was. But with that comes a whole lot of stress on top of it. So there are trade-offs, and you have to decide what's most important to you. And there are a couple things in the chat that I want to call
Please,
out.
yeah.
Someone mentioned, and rightfully so, that companies periodically should do kind of a recalibration on their salaries.
Yeah.
They should, not all of them do. A lot of companies will also have information on salary bands. Now, smaller companies may not do that, and so that's why resources like this are so valuable. You can go in and provide that resource to advocate for yourself. And then a couple of folks have also called out the fact that there is shortly going to be kind of a flood of IT people entering the market from the federal government sector. And so that may have an impact and throw a few things off. But
Yeah, I think we are going to see a lot of volatility in the IT space over the next few months.
Yeah, I've been in, just like browsing Reddit and stuff. It kind of sounds like we're already at like a point where there's a lot of sysadmins out there looking for work and not a lot of jobs open.
Yeah. What David just said in chat, I want to call it, because I tried to say this, but David, you said it well better. Leadership versus IC is a new job. It is. It is a clear distinction. Like just because like you may know how to do the work, managing people is very different than managing systems.
So true.
They're very, very
So
different.
true.
And then all of the MSP chatter is absolutely right.
Yeah.
Right. You get a ton of experience in a ton of different environments and you become a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
But it's, at least in my opinion, foundationally a great place to start, because then you can figure out what you want to do.
Yes,
And if you
yes.
do want to, especially if you want to go that senior IC route, you know what you want to focus on.
Because I would imagine specialization is like the key to growth if you really want to be an IC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that
really
makes
is.
sense.
But especially like early on in your career development, like you're starting with an MSP, and like you said, you're getting like a vast amount of experience in a lot of different situations. Whereas if you could just go and work at some small to medium business, their tech stack,
Yep.
you know their software, their servers, their resources, things like that. And then when you go to apply for a job, you're like, oh man, like they were kind of a unicorn.
Yeah.
All of a
That's
sudden.
the worst when
Whereas
you
an
learn
MSP
after that they were a unicorn. You're like, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas an MSP, you're like, oh yeah, I've dealt with, hundreds of different
Yeah.
configurations and
Yeah.
whatnot, and have that experience. And then you take, you do that, you kind of bust your butt for 3 to 5 years. And then it's like, all of a sudden you just like, it really opens up to you.
It does.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So there's been some comments in the chat about why people would stay in certain industries, and that's the last way that we would parse this data is what are IT professionals making depending on the field that they're employed in. We had some people in the chat talk about, for example, working at a university. And so there's some things I want to point out here. Probably not a surprise, but education does tend to be the lowest paid industry for IT professionals to work at. We salute you. We thank you for your efforts. It's a hard work environment, and it's so essential. On the flip side, if all you are chasing is money and growth, we would tell you to look at technology, healthcare, and professional services, meaning things like attorneys' offices. Yeah, that's kind of an example of what would be professional services. So that's where we see the highest number of people making over $150,000. But there are trade-offs to consider. And I know you two each have experience in some of these fields. So Josh, I wanted to ask you, you've worked in the technology space. And am I right? And have you also worked in healthcare?
So I cut my teeth in an MSP, like most
Gotcha.
people. So we had healthcare clients. So I have a skewed perspective on what that looks
Yeah.
like. So not
But
directly
some
healthcare,
contact
but like
with
some
it.
context there.
What do you see as some of the pros and cons? Because obviously there's a reason some people stay in education and don't go into
I will tell you,
technology.
working at a technology company is interesting because nothing is ever the same.
Yeah.
except for patterns repeat. Right? Patterns are repetitive,
Mm-hmm,
but it's always new tech. It's always something new. There's always a new way to do something. And so it almost feels like you're constantly chasing your tail, playing catch up, right? You're like, I'm chasing this next thing. The patterns are the same, but you're chasing, ever, increasing gains and performance or efficiency or whatever it is here. Healthcare, on the other hand, at least my experience, was a lot more rigid, right? There was protocol. There was heavy doses of compliance. And it was like, this is the way that things get done.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's trade-offs there. People that like to be just in chaos monkey mode, which I thrive in.
A little undiagnosed ADHD
Like,
for some of us.
I love it. Like, I love the always new,
Yeah,
never actually having a full grasp of what's going on, just enough.
Novelty, yeah.
I would suffer in a highly regulated role.
Yeah. And Brock, I wanted to ask you, because I know you worked in IT and education at a university, right?
Yeah.
So just from your experience and your colleagues, what are some of the pros and cons of that space?
I mean, obviously, like education, and I think pretty much everybody would agree with this, is probably the pay. I mean, they're just really, really like strapped for resources in education, coming down to like, government budgeting and stuff.
Totally.
So like, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. It's not like, hey, you know what? I feel like I deserve a promotion or a raise or whatever. And you just go to your boss, you're like, that's not how it works, And they're like, we'll look at it once a year, maybe. And if years aren't great, then we just won't look at it at all. So you're lucky if you would get like cost of living increase.
Wow.
Definitely the pay is a hard one there, but there are some benefits, a lot of times it can be more of a chill job. It's like, hey, everything's working, then, I don't got a lot on my plate. I'm not super stressed out. But probably the biggest benefit you're looking at there, a lot of people will say for like the retirement. 401k can scare a lot of people.
Yes.
And a retirement, especially I feel like these days, is very attractive.
Yeah. Would people get an actual pension?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, the dream.
Yeah. I kind of my experience wasn't so great because I got hired on right after they made some structuring changes to IT. So like everyone in my IT department was classified except for me. I got hired on right like a year after they made these changes, and I got hired on as a professional, basically like a contract worker almost.
Yeah.
And so I got put into like the 401k was still awesome.
Yeah.
Like I had no issues there. They matched really, really high.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I would have been on that same pension plan, that would have been very attractive for me.
That makes sense. And I see some people in the chat calling out similar things like work schedule and calendar is a great perk to stay in education. So we hope this data gives you some leverage the next time you're having a career conversation at your workplace. Next week, we're going to dig into a different part of the report. We're going to talk about the role of AI in IT because that is changing things. And a lot of you had things to say about that in the survey. So send in questions. Let us know what you're particularly interested in and bring those questions to the chat next week and we'll dig into it.
Okay. Krista, that was awesome.
That was really fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being here.
And speaking of AI, as a matter of fact, we were going to do a contest. We were going to pit Josh against AI, ChatGPT, and see who gave the best answers.
Great.
But you know what? Josh, you get a week off. You get a week reprieve.
All right.
We're going to combine that next week with AI and IT.
Ooh.
And so you have another week to prepare yourself to take on.
Oh, do I just need to go consume large amounts of data over the next week?
Josh is our large language model right there.
Okay.
Before we wrap up, though, we've got like 60 seconds to spare. Can you hit this question from Michael Adams? He has a question.
I would love to.
Would you address that one and just use that to kind of...
So Michael asks, how does one get experience in things more senior roles want? My job doesn't have MDM currently, but that seems to be a requirement for certain roles.
Yeah. That's actually like a very valid question and kind of hard. I can just talk to my personal experience. What I did is I home labbed. I home labbed a lot, like way more than I should have. I was working in MSP. Every time that we'd like replace equipment or there was new equipment at the MSP, all of the old stuff got shoved into racks. And that's where I like messed with things.
Gotcha.
And it was actually really helpful for me to teach other people the thing that I was learning because then it really solidified it for me.
Yeah, that's a great path. I mean, to be able to say, you don't have to say like, oh yeah, I have MDM experience from a former job. Like the fact that you've been at home messing with it, figuring it out, knowing like the ins and outs of an MDM solution. Yeah, there's no difference. And the fact is like doing it at home, is a stress-free environment. You're not worried about bringing down production and stuff like that. And you can like have your YouTube videos, your education resources, and be able to like play in this environment and learn these resources. So yeah, when you're looking for jobs, you're looking at specific requirements that people have. Be like, oh yeah, I can set that up in my house, you know.
Yeah.
And the equipment to do that, you don't need like these super expensive servers to kind of do that. So
Like, and the fun thing specifically about MDM, like especially if it's Apple MDM, like one iPad is the same as 500 iPads. Right, like it's a repeatable process that hardware's controlled. Things get a little crazy when you go into the Windows world, and stuff can be all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
but at least MDM truly in the Apple sense, that's
sense.
a little clearer playground.
and one thing, I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but as far as like Status Sysadmin, did we mention that was live? Did we say that that's a resource live out on the website right now that everybody can go and look at? And
Thanks, Brock. I appreciate the shout out.
Link is in the description here in YouTube. I also put it in chat, in the YouTube chat, and I will see if I can drop that in there again.
because we're going to cover it for the next few weeks, but like,
It's there
don't
now.
waste. Dive in and just take a look at and kind of like absorb all that information because there's some really good stuff in there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited for next week now, and I'm glad I get a week longer to prep.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us today, everybody. For PDQ, I'm Josh.
I'm Brock.
I'm Krista.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. If you like what you've seen, and to be honest, even if you don't, please just go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us some comments and join us on Discord. That's always where the conversation continues. Have a fantastic week. We will see you back here next time.